This is the November 19th, 2024 regular meeting of the Chatham County Savannah Metropolitan Planning Commission. The Planning Commission consists of Ms. Karen Jarrett, Chairwoman, Mr. Travis Coles, Vice Chairman, Mr. Tom Wildwoody, Secretary, Ms. Lorraine Bowles, Treasurer. Board members are Mr. Dwayne Stevens, Ms. Tracy Hammett, Mr. Joseph Irvine, Mr. Michael Kagler, Ms. Amanda Wilson, Mr. Jay Melder, Mr. Jeff Nortricia, Mr. Joseph Welch, Ms. Corinne Ross, and Mr. Stephen Pluck. The MPC Executive Director is Melanie Wilson.
The November 19th regular meeting of the Chatham County Savannah Metropolitan Planning Commission will now come to order. Apologies for our lateness. We're going to pause and do our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. For staff, petitioners, and members of the public who are participating, our procedures will be as follows. The agenda is broken down into several parts. First, notices, proclamations, and acknowledgments. Next, the consent agenda, which consists of items for which the applicant is in agreement with staff recommendation and there are no known objections. This will be followed by regular business, old business, and adjournment. For each agenda item on regular business, the staff will make a presentation. The staff presentation will then be followed by a presentation from the petitioner, should they elect to do so. The petitioner will be allotted a time frame of no more than 20 minutes. The board may then ask questions of the petitioner or staff for clarification. Afterwards, the floor will be open for public comment. If you wish to comment on the item that the board is considering at the time, members of the public that are in person must fill out a speaker card, like that, and give it to staff. If you are participating virtually, use the raise your hand feature on your screen. Do not use the feature until the item you want to comment on is being considered. At the appropriate time, you will be recognized and staff will unmute your microphone. At the end of your allotted time, as determined by the chair, your microphone will be muted and the chair will recognize the next speaker. The total public comment time will be less than or equivalent to the petitioner's presentation time. Therefore, for those participating online, it is important that you use the raise your hand feature during the hearing on that item if you want to speak on a petition. Once the floor is closed for public comment on a petition, no additional public speakers will be allowed. If you are not certain you want to speak, still use the raise your hand feature, or if in person, fill out the speaker card. You will have the opportunity to decline when your name is called. After public comment, the petitioner will have the opportunity for rebuttal and then address any needed questions by the board. Finally, the board will take action. All right, the first thing on our agenda is approval of the agenda.
Irvin, so move approval of our agenda.
Stevens, second.
All right, all in favor, voice vote?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. We have no notices, proclamations, or acknowledgments. We do have 3 items requested to be removed from the final agenda. There's a Flume amendment for 1950 Benton Boulevard and 76 Highlands Boulevard from commercial suburban to residential, general and industry light, and commercial suburban. Is there anyone here who wanted to speak on that item? All right, the next item that we have is a map amendment for 1950 Benton Boulevard, 76 Highlands Boulevard, to rezone from PDC to IL and BC. Anyone here to speak on that item? Okay, and the final one is a general development plan with a variance for Preston Drive, Point Grand, Savannah, variances to encroach on existing wetland buffers. Is there anyone here to speak on that item? All right. The consent agenda has the approval of meeting minutes and the approval of the 2025 MPC meeting calendar.
Madam Chair, can we make a motion, a vote?
Oh,
for that?
I'm sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there a motion to remove the items from the agenda?
Irvin moves to remove items 1 through 3 under paragraph 5.
Stevens, second.
All in favor, voice vote? Any opposed? All right, now we're going to go to the consent agenda with minutes on it. Do I have a motion?
Irvin to approve consent agenda items 4 and 5.
Stevens, second.
All in favor, voice vote? Any opposed? All right, now we're at the regular business. There's a map amendment for 0 Silk Hope Road, rezoned from PBC to PB. Number is Z-0924-000508. Thank you, Mr. Clement.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. My name is Brad Clement. I'm from Development Services here at the Metropolitan Planning Commission. Today we have with us on this request both the petitioner and concerned citizens adjacent to the property. Subject petitioner is requesting the rezoning, as you mentioned, Madam Chair, for a rezoning from PBC to PB in unincorporated Chatham County. This property, as you can see in the slide, is located adjacent to Dean Forest and Ogeechee. It does not have existing infrastructure to the site. It does not have existing curb cuts to the site. Access as it currently stands is through unimproved right-of-way off of Silk Hope Road. This zoning action has been requested before by previous petitioners, separate and different than the current petitioner. Here you see the current zoning, you'll see the PBC. There's also a small sliver of RA here. All of this would become PB should this action be approved. The primary difference here is the use. The petitioner is requesting this rezoning to accommodate a freight truck terminal facility. Key difference here, because this has been requested before. Number one, the petitioner owns the property. He is not a real estate speculator. He's an existing resident and business owner in Chatham County. And two, he's proposing a curb cut on Ogeechee and has gone so far as to reach out to GDOT to start the conversation for the allowable right in, right out of the facility, different than previous requests. Staff uses the same yardstick as it relates to intensity of use and development and the adjacent properties, and takes into account the neighborhood feeling about the development, and we neither support or are anti-development in any way. We use the same yardstick every time, and that is what is presented in the staff report that you've had before you. Staff recommends denial of this because the material facts in this case are not substantially different per our yardstick as previous requests. There may be other differences, but I will allow the petitioner and interested parties to speak to those, because these are things that are not part of our measurement system when we prepare this analysis. Pending your questions, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair,
Can we hear from the petitioner first?
this is just to staff, if I may.
Okay.
What was the recommendation last time this was presented?
Staff has maintained the position of denial, again, because of the material facts. The initial request was supported by this commission for denial. The subsequent request was reversing the staff recommendation and the vote for approval. Both times it had gone to the county commission, it was denied.
Yeah.
Thank you. Is the petitioner here?
Morning,
Morning. If you would
or afternoon, sorry.
state your name for the record.
Michael Smith.
All right. Would you like to share anything with us?
Sure. Excuse my ignorance of the processes, but this is the first time for me. We're, just a few thoughts. We're a local business. We've been in the transportation logistics business or I've been in it 33 years. My dad was in the business for 30 years. I'm a second-generation trucker. One of my business partners is a third-generation trucker in our area. His grandmother was the first female to ever hold intrastate authority back way before deregulation. We buy trailers from Great Dane Trailers. We've bought them from them for many years. We love the community. We support the community. We've met with some of our new neighbors, and basically what I would say is that, as you guys know, the price of land is going up, and they're not making any more dirt. And so we need a home. We need a place to work. We're a good, reputable, local carrier. We employ roughly 100 people that are all from our community. We run a very tight ship. We've got a good safety record. In fact, our safety director is the wife of the local FMCSA investigator. So they keep us on a tightrope. I would just say from that perspective, we just want a great place to work and a great place for our people to work. And that's kind of been our position all along, and we want to do whatever we can do to be a benefit to the community and not a harm to it. So that's kind of where we're at. I don't know if that sheds a little light or helps maybe you understand who we are, but that's kind of where we're at.
Thank you. I think we'll see if anyone has questions. I have some questions.
Okay.
How many trucks do you think will be entering and leaving this facility on a daily basis?
So that explanation is we have about 90 trucks. About 65 of them are staffed. Now, we run a local operation and we run an over-the-road operation. Our local operation, many of those trucks are parked at customer facilities. Drivers park their personal vehicle there, they report there to that customer's facility, get in their truck and go about their work, and that truck may never see the yard, maybe once a week for an inspection or something to that effect. Also to that point, our local guys come in very early, the ones that do go in and out of the yard. They come in 4:30, 5:30, they're out because the port, as we all know, is open super early, so they want to get to the gate and start making money as quickly as possible. So they go in and out early, and they're usually returning pretty late in the afternoon. Road drivers interchange in and off the yard during the night. So maybe 3 in the morning, 2:30 in the morning, 4 in the morning, where there's not a ton of traffic going on. And I would add that to your thought, for 3 years, we rented the property across Ogeechee Road from a gentleman there, and we never had an incident. That was a right-in, right-out facility, and so we navigated that without any issues for 3 years. So to answer your question, I don't know that I could pinpoint an exact number of trucks go in and out throughout the day, but once they're out, that's kind of it. They're out. It's not like a constant interchange of equipment all day, every day. I hope that helps.
More than 10?
I'm sorry?
More than 10?
That would be doing what? Going in and out throughout the day?
Well, yes, it would be using the driveway.
I would say around 10, maybe 10, 12 that would go in and out during the day hours. But again, most of our folks are out working in and out of the port, going to customer locations. We're not really going to be, you see a lot of yards that are stacking containers and they're parking lots essentially, and that's not our operation. Our operation is send the guys out, the gals out, they do their work, and they report back to the office in the evening.
How cumbersome will the right-in, right-out make it for your drivers to get where they need to go? Will they have to make U-turns?
So I'm going to answer what I know, and then I'm going to speculate just a little bit, if that's okay. Coming right off of Dean Forest Road, so you've come out of the port, you go all the way to the end of Ogeechee Road, you turn right. That right in will be super simple. Right out, oh, I'm sorry, I'll stand this way. Right out, that would be more cumbersome to go down, find the best first place to U-turn and go back to Dean Forest Road. Now that's where we're at today. What our hope would be is that we can navigate this issue with GDOT and say, hey, there's a big, huge space in the middle of Ogeechee Road that's completely unused and untouched. And if they would allow it, we believe it would be safer to go left out directly to the light. So you'd go left out middle, and that turn lane would take you all the way to a left turn onto Dean Forest Road. That would be kind of our thinking. Now, we could be wrong about that, certainly, but our thinking was with the light, if you're going south on Ogeechee Road, you reach the Dean Forest traffic light, it turns red, you're there, a space creates in the traffic flow, aside from folks who are turning right on Ogeechee off of Dean Forest, it creates a space, and that would be a great time to make a left turn out into the middle lane, go directly to the light, turn left, and you're on your way to the port. That's
Thank you.
speculation, but I hope we can reach that agreement with GDOT.
All right.
First, I appreciate you for giving us a little bit of the history of your operation. I understand your objective in trying to convey that information. So you said you're currently renting or leasing or had previously leased some space at a lot across the street. Is it north of Dean Forest or just south?
So it's south of Dean Forest. Where the corner that we would be at, it's kind of across Ogeechee a little bit to the right. Sorry. Thanks, Brad. So this is us here?
That's you.
Okay, so like right here, this space here is where we were renting. And what happened there, to be quite frank, is that we just reached a place where the lease payment, they wanted to adjust it pretty significantly when the lease was up, and it just became untenable. So currently, we have an office at Chatham Center Drive in the Orlean Building, and we have a yard across from Ocean Terminal. It's the old Great Dane employee parking lot, actually, and they were kind enough to lease us that space for a reasonable price, but that's not really a long-term, option for us.
In this location that you used to be in, how did the trucks get back and forth? Obviously, the right turn out and on to Dean Forest was fairly easy.
Right.
Trying to get back into the facility,
They had to go down to the next light, U-turn.
make a
and come
U-turn,
back. Yes, ma'am.
about the same as,
And we did that for those 3 years. We were very clear with our folks that you got to be hypersensitive about this situation, and we never had a fender bender, so.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
Help me orient myself where you are. I'm going down Dean Forest. I'm making a right. There's a lot over to the left, and you're talking about the lot that sits over to the right on the opposite side of it. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. So when you turn right onto going south on Ogeechee, it's basically immediately that space where there's a cell tower there and a big advertisement sign. It sits in the middle of the property. Yeah.
Okay.
It's wooded, yeah.
Okay. That's what I want, because I know there's a parking area across on the opposite side, and there's one on the opposite side if you make a left down Ogeechee as well.
Yeah, if you turn left at Ogeechee at the end of Dean Forest, there's a new space that just came up, and they built big berms and created a lot there.
And would your lot be similar to that in terms of usage?
I think that's more parking and storage.
Okay.
So there's probably a little bit more in and out activity at that spot. But it does look, to me, as a old trucking guy, it looks pretty nice to me. They built the big berms and all of that. But I think it's more storage, parking, trucks coming in and out and picking up all day and that sort of thing. So it's a little bit different what we
Okay.
would be doing.
But the same amount of traffic, you would say?
I would say so.
Okay, thank you.
Certainly no more.
Just to chime in on to the point, the one that you're talking about, Mr. Irvin, further down in Garden City, I will admit, it is it is relatively low impact. It seems as if it's almost not used sometimes, from what I've seen, traveling back and forth up and down that space. Because I guess that operation may be moving, like you said, that you would potentially be moving like late at night. So I just wanted to just add that piece of information. If this operation is comparable to that, then maybe that's something to consider.
Technical difficulties, I apologize.
It's okay. All right, go ahead. Ms. Wilson.
In the space that you were renting previously, when you are coming off of Dean Forest and you take a right and you're going south, how did you get into the place that you're renting? Did you have to go down and then turn around in the
there you
median? Or is there a median right there, or can you go
No, there's
make a direct?
There is a median there.
So you did have to, so you've always,
Yes, ma'am.
so this, going across the street, I see. So going across the street, you're still going to have to make those turnaround, it's not going to change.
If we were able to get GDOT to give us left out,
Right.
then it would change drastically.
Right.
But in the current situation, yes, it would be the same.
And you haven't had a problem doing that turnaround around that median previously?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
No. So, no reportable incidences or fender benders or anything there. It's been, our folks, again, I'm very thankful our processes for hiring are stringent, and we are clear. We even, like in that case, we actually went out there with them to the space and looked at it, and, we're very clear about how to make
Yes.
that turn.
So it's still, whether you're across the street or on the same side that you're renting, you're still going to have to make that U-turn that's never been a problem for you before. And if GDOT does make that a center lane, it would improve the conditions of a really tight space coming out of Silk Hope and along right there at that section of 17.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, I do have a couple of speaker cards. Ms. Diane Brannon, please state your name for the record when you get up here.
Hey there, my name is Diane Brannon. I'm a resident of Silk Hope Road, 5528 Silk Hope Road. My neighbors, y'all excuse, I hope I'm offending nobody, they call me the mayor of Silk Hope Road. I was given that title a while back, and it's because I kept going around meeting people over this very issue, and we really chewed the fat on this, and we think Mike's great, and his partners are great. We actually met with them and spoke with them over the phone. We all came away saying, we feel like adopting them. They're really nice people. And the other thing I liked about him is he's offering to help with some neighborhood solutions. How practical that is, I don't know. But one of the things that we're facing an uphill battle with right now as a community is neighborhood blight. It's been horrible. I'm going to have some more meetings about this very issue in the weeks ahead. In the meantime, Copart, who was one of the stakeholders, and they gave us a yes vote on this rezoning, but their attitude was a little bit different. They said, we want that property. And I said, well, where are you? Why didn't you speak up sooner? And the problem with Copart is their ownership is in Connecticut, and I think another one's in Virginia. I didn't realize how big Copart was. They're an international company. That just blew me away. They've been a stakeholder in our neighborhood for over since 2002, I think. 1999, I think, is when they actually bought the property. They're over 40 acres directly across the street from Mike's property. And right now, today, I'm thinking they have 20 rigs going up and down Silk Hope Road, crossing Silk Hope, crossing Ogeechee Road, and making a left onto Ogeechee Road with no traffic light. Day before yesterday, I bet there were 100 rigs. And I don't mean they range anywhere from little car haulers to gigantic 50-foot car haulers. I mean, and they take up the whole road, and you've got to pull over and let the things go by. Mike's idea perhaps is to, if not outright selling at some point to Copart, letting them have share the driveway, in that cost, or maybe even pay for the driveway outright, and facilitate their getting off and on, in and out of that area without running over people on Silcope Road, or trying to make a U-turn, or in this case, a huge left-hand turn. Now, half their traffic goes left on Ogeechee Road towards Dean
You've got
Forest.
30 seconds left.
Yeah, and the other half goes right on Ogeechee Road. There was a huge funeral at our next-door neighbor's place, Magnolia Memorial Gardens, and it was a huge funeral, and we let them take over our yards, and we've had as many as 500 cars there. We've had some humongous funerals, and we feel it's important to preserve our side of the road for their, parking, and my neighbor will get out there and...
Thank you.
Yeah,
Exactly.
anyway, so that's it. But anyway, we do support it, but with conditions.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, and I appreciate your time and effort. Thank you.
All right, I also have Mr. Chase Rosen online. Mr. Rosen, you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, go ahead. If you could speak a little louder, please.
Chase Rosen. I hope you can hear me all right. I live nearby at Fenwick Village Apartments. I used to live actually just off the screen here down there at Dean Road. And I wanted to speak in opposition to this. I do appreciate your business, and I still drive by every day to work. And when I do see a rig coming and going, they're, in my mind, as respectful as you can be waiting for your turn to enter onto Ogeechee Road. There's nothing personal against them, it's just that I don't think there needs to be any further industrialization along Ogeechee Road. The old property is going to stay the same zoning it is, whoever leases it after or whoever it's sold to, it's going to stay busy or busier. This is only going to take away land that could otherwise be more housing or could be a commercial development that's close to a transit hub. I have friends who ride their bicycles past here. I know people who walk along this route. Again, I used to live at Derrick County Road. Many of my neighbors, they sit at the bus stops that are there. Often in the heat in the summer, there's no seats or anything. They'll be sitting in the grass waiting for up to an hour just for a bus to come by, and sometimes it's with trucks driving by them as well. But I also have to think about the unfortunate pedestrian fatalities that happen between Doorway and 516 in particular. Every year, this one pedestrian dies, and this year has been no exception. And it's because we have this mixture of treating Ogeechee Road like a street that has local businesses and homes that face the street that are up close and personal. And at the same time, we treat it like a highway. I know it's Highway 17, but like Highway 80 at Victory, you wouldn't call Victory right by Death Park a highway. And you shouldn't be able to call Ogeechee Road one either, because people walk it, they cycle along it, they live along it every day. And when we get to these high speeds and these industrial developments, then it just endangers everybody. So with much respect to the business and adding a little extra job security thanks to the I just don't think this is the right location for this sort of activity. And I would really rather hope to see some more retail or even residential development in this area. I know nobody here has to say that, but if we can prevent the rezoning, then that seems like the most likely option in the future.
Thank you. All right. I don't have any other speaker cards. Would the applicant like to come up and make any final comments or rebut the discussion?
Actually, it's a bit more of a question maybe, but I'm not so sure that, because I was really trying hard, my hearing is a little wonky, but I was really trying hard to listen to that gentleman about retail or maybe homes and that sort of thing there, and I'm not so sure that the infrastructure supports that from a from a water perspective and that sort of thing, because we would actually, I think, end up with probably a well and sewer just for our office. And so I'm not so sure that that would ever actually be a viable option there.
All
And
right.
plus, it's sort of surrounded by, aside from the Silk Hope residence on the other side, it's surrounded by sort of industrial type properties. If you look at Sagis, that's what's literally all around it. So that would be my kind of question and thought on that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, discussion? Y'all ready to make a motion?
Madam Chair, if there is I've looked at this, this project a couple times, and from the commission perspective, there was opposition for them to use Silk Hope as a means of egress. And the petitioner, they did talk about getting a permit from DOT to make a right in and right out. So whatever, if there's a consensus to support this, I would want to add a condition that the only egress will be from Dean Forest and not Silk Hope.
Are you making a motion or just
No,
putting a condition on the motion?
Condition on the motion.
Okay. Mr. Stevens?
I just want to make sure I understand what Mr. Kegler presented. You said that the condition would be the only path to egress would be on Dean Forest?
No, on Ogeechee.
On Ogeechee,
No, he said-
I'm
I
sorry.
said Dean Forest.
I said Dean Forest, but I meant Ogeechee Road. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to support the petitioner's request with the condition of ingress and egress off of Ogeechee Road only.
Irvin, second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Ms. Bowles?
Yes.
Mr. Irvin?
Yes.
Mr. Kegler?
Yes.
Mr. Melder?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Stevens?
No.
I too say no. Motion passes. All right. Our next agenda item is a map amendment, a flume amendment, future land use map amendment for 1001 and 1015 Whitaker Street, as well as 120 and 124 West Park, from TN1 to TC2, number 24005816-ZA. I understand that we also have a map amendment coming up right after this, so we're going to let Mr. Morrow kind of discuss both of them, and we'll separate them out at the end.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Members of our Planning Commission, Edward Morrow, Director of Development Services. As the Chair just indicated, I'd like to discuss these jointly because consideration of the rezoning is contingent upon your support for the future land use. And so what you can see on your screen here is an aerial view of the 4 parcels that are the subject of these particular actions. The first action is an amendment of the future land use map from a traditional neighborhood designation to a traditional commercial. And following that, a request to rezone the property from traditional neighborhood 1, which is specific to the Victoria Neighborhood District, to a traditional commercial 2 zoning district. And just to orient everyone, these are, again, in a more realistic view, the 4 parcels that are subject to this petition, just there on the west side of Forsyth Park. And to offer you a street view, you can see that these are mid-century office buildings that have a somewhat suburban configuration. They have large parking lots that support these uses. And so I'm going to offer a bit of preface in hopes that it will support the board and the public in sort of understanding staff's position in supporting these requests. So a bit of preface in order to sort of shorten what I'm going to say at the very end. The first thing I want to note is that the present request considers only the amendments to the future land use map and the rezoning of this parcel. We understand that there is an intent to seek variances. That is not part of today's request for consideration. We are purely considering the amendment of the future land use map and the appropriateness of the requested rezoning to TC2. Any of those development standards that are applicable within the base zoning district are those that would apply should this be approved by City Council, and any alteration of those would require a subsequent application after that has been approved by City Council. Issuance of site development permits will still ultimately require approval of all review departments from the city. So traffic, stormwater, park and tree, fire, and all other reviewing departments, their requirements are going to have to be satisfied before there can be issuance of a site development permit, even beyond this board's approval. Also, new construction on this set of parcels requires issuance of a certificate of appropriateness from the Historic Preservation Commission. So ultimately, we are kind of establishing a building envelope that ultimately the Historic Preservation Commission is going to have the final say about what this looks like and how it presents. And so with that, just to offer you a thought, well-designed buildings have the ability to change uses over time while continuing to contribute to strong district form and character. So unlike some of the other petitions that we see here, where this is a more development-centric rather than design-centric sort of a venue, today we're going to talk a bit about form. This is really about a needed increase in use intensity at this particular location that's sort of necessitated by changing circumstances over time. And because I couldn't have said it better myself, I'm going to borrow some language from the letter of support that we received from the Victorian Neighborhoods Association. The V&A vision states that ours is an active, thriving neighborhood and that streets are a priority over cars. The V&A promotes new development which respects our past while enriching access to new retail, office, and entertainment options in scale and in character with the neighborhood. We believe the proposed development aligns with these values. It features an urban massing that is compatible with the open spaces and mature tree canopy of Forsyth Park, architectural detailing that is contextual and human scale, a true mix of uses and streetscapes designed for people over cars. But the thing that I really want to point to in this letter is this recognition that cities evolve by necessity. They, by necessity, allow adaptations. They change over time. The city of Savannah has a future, and this is about recognizing how it is that we sort of enshrine those things that we value that are on the ground while also setting up a framework to guide what's going to happen next. And so it's with that mindset that I hope we step into looking at these petitions. As you've heard me stand here and say before, the Victorian and Mid-City neighborhoods are in need of a new zoning district or overlay. We talked about this very recently, and I raised 17 West Park, which this board considered not very long ago, back on September 24th. And we stated that a text amendment to allow 4 parcels to, in essence, have a restaurant use was probably not the most efficient way to achieve that. It was at that time that we said that we should consider the creation of a new overlay district or a new zoning district that was commercially focused, but not necessarily at the full intensity of a TC2, but recognizing the nuances of the Victorian or even the Mid-City district. And since that time, we have seen a few petitions, other than this one, that have caused us to sort of understand that the nature of what's happening around Forsyth Park is changing. And so I will point to this map right here that shows you this orange indicates all of our TN1 zoned parcels. And I have placed some red lines here to show you our thoroughfares. So of course, I believe it was at the very last meeting that unfortunately I wasn't with you, you discussed a parking lot. And we talked about the fact that we are seeing uses intensify along our arterials. I have identified most of our major corridors, and these are the places where we are beginning to see a need for commercial that is a little bit beyond the scale of what the TN supports. Again, being a largely residential district that allows mixing of uses, what we are asking for or seeing requests for are things like restaurants, things like dispensation of alcohol, that are associated at this time with zoning districts that we believe are a little bit more intense than perhaps what we would like. And so we are looking at this from that perspective, that this new ordinance or overlay is needed so that we can properly encapsulate all of those things. I want to point out something else here that I think is pretty important. The fact that STVRs are also changing the nature of what's happening in our neighborhoods, right? This goes back to that form over function. We are not actually seeing a change in the form. We're seeing historic structures that are functioning in what is essentially a commercial capacity. I can go and I can rent one, and it's much like a hotel. If I live in the house next door, I'm seeing people who are coming and going who are not my neighbor. That's not a neighborhood completely residential use if we're talking about a property that has been converted for STVR use. So again, this is changing the character of this district, even though it looks the same. And so just to take you to the future land use request, you can see here that right now there is this traditional neighborhood designation. But if we look at the future land use map, we can see that here within this urban core character area, it makes reference to 2 to 4 story structures, right? We're talking about dense, walkable urban fabric. And again, perhaps our language is not precise enough to fully capture the nuance of this particular district, but it's to go from what traditional neighborhood identifies as residential areas to something that is somewhere in between, the missing middle, if you will, between the traditional neighborhood and traditional commercial. Not quite fully commercial, but also not quite lacking in residences and distant from this idea that we still have stable neighborhoods and people living here, all right? So just to show you here in this area, this is our subject parcel. We've got a building with a footprint. Actually, to point out all of these, they are in excess of what the current zoning district permits. These are the existing structures, and so of course we're going to see these go away, but there are several others that will live here, and I'm imagining at some point we are going to be deciding how it is that we develop these particular parcels. I'm so sorry, sir.
Can I interject just for a second?
Absolutely.
I just want to make sure I'm clear in understanding what these numbers represent. Is that the footprint, square
These are
footage?
square footages.
Thank you.
Right. And so we see the Buhan Faligant, which is probably the newest addition that's comparable in this area at almost 6,000 square feet.
And that's 3 stories?
It is 3 stories. That is correct. What we have here, a very quick map made by Sabashi that shows us kind of the progression of these buildings over time. And I raised this only to show that we have kind of a period of time where I think we have some design decisions that we're not particularly pleased with. And so the fact that they do not have the hatching on them, like many of the green buildings with the hatchings are the ones that are contributing. They're not going anywhere. So they can change function over time, even though they're going to remain within that same form, and whatever happens will happen in that existing structure. The things that don't have hatching potentially could go away, and many of them are very large footprint structures. So just to point that out, there's much opportunity out here as we, again, continue to consider what is the most appropriate path forward for what's happening in this area. And so with that, to turn to the zoning map, you can see that there is traditional neighborhood 1 zoning in this area. I'll also, again, just point out this is 17 West Park, which rather than amending the text of the zoning ordinance to allow a restaurant specifically, was rezoned to TC2, this very district. You will see a restaurant use occur within a contributing historic structure. So again, it's not going anywhere. Form has remained the same. We've just seen use intensify. So to compare development standards here, again, I think what we're really getting at is the fact that the TN1 envisions a predominantly residential context. So you've basically got a situation where you can have some non-residential uses that probably have residences on top of them, if anything. So again, that tells you a little bit about the structure that's going on. And so I think that's how you end up at a 2,500 square foot footprint. Also, you can go up to about 40 feet depending on whether or not you have a contributing structure on your block. But just to point out that these footprints, there's no maximum building coverage, but again, it maintains that same 70% building frontage, so you still get kind of a walkable pedestrian envelope, right? So it's comparable, just slightly intensified, and that's really the idea here. We're not going for a change in character, just allowing it to sort of update as a reflection of all the changes that we're seeing in this area. Last, I'll point out that this district permits 3 stories up to 45 feet. So I pointed out this particular criteria from the zoning evaluation, again, just to reiterate the fact that the present request is a response to a changing and growing nature of the local real estate market. And so we have protective measures in place. Again, we have lots of contributing structures that are being converted for something a little bit more than residential use, perhaps, even though they're occurring in the same buildings. They're relatively low intensity, but we need a zoning overlay or a new district that will allow new development that is contextually sensitive, and it extends the existing fabric that's already there and enhances it. That is really the idea. Added to this, I'll note that on March 28th, the City Council endorsed a development agreement with Forsyth Park Commons LLC for an underground parking garage. And this is somewhat forward-thinking in that we have all of these existing historic structures that are now being repurposed, adaptive reuse. I'll point to 1201 Abercorn as a great example, the Asbury United Methodist Church, which just got, it's going to receive a facelift, and it is going to be, in essence, a restaurant and venue. And so because it is within a district where preservation is prioritized, it was permitted basically to be redeveloped without any off-street parking. This board supported a rezoning of that parcel with 7 parking spaces, right? And so this is an area where we do prioritize preservation of existing structures and enhancement of the things that are happening in the future. And so again, placing our parking structures underground is something that will permit us to ensure that we can place our structures above ground in a manner that maintains the type of development pattern that we have. So we pointed to the Parking Matters study that actually comes from about 2016. And what I'll just say here is that this seems to align with the recommendations from that study. And I will note for the record that serious consideration should be given to implementation of the other associated recommendations, like extension of fixed route circulator services, and ensuring that there's thoughtful planning for people to access what are really growing neighborhood activity centers. There are a number of them around town, and so connecting these city-owned parking assets with points of interest around the city, I think, is a vital step to making this viable. Also, adjustment of our parking pricing so that we can encourage use of this city-owned structure. Finally, with that, staff does recommend approval of this request both to amend the future land use map and to change the zoning district to TC2 in the absence of a more precise fit at this time, with the one condition that the permissible uses shall consist only of those permitted in the TN1 zoning district. This is not necessarily intended to be a permanent solution. The idea is that we would have a community partner who would come forward and would say, we want to undertake the development of a district that sort of adequately accounts for all the nuances of this particular neighborhood. I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, is the applicant here?
Hang on. Okay. Staff.
Can we wait until we hear from the applicant and do it all at one time? Sorry.
Okay.
Good afternoon. My name is Jeff Jepson. My name is Jeff Jepson. I'm representing the Forsyth Common Holdings LLC, which hopes to be the developer of this particular property. I really was more interested in talking about process here. We have 4 principles that are supposed to be part of this particular development, and we take this opportunity to redevelop this portion of the park very seriously, and it's a great responsibility. Those 4 owners operate large businesses in the community and have been doing so for over 30 years. That includes Delaney Industries, whose main headquarters and office is actually in the neighborhood district. Sterling Seacrest, whose offices are on this actual property, will have to vacate the property as part of the development. Hunter McLean Law Firm, that, as you know, we have a large loss of office space downtown, and including their office where they sold, and so this is part of an opportunity to keep some offices back downtown. And then you also have Evans General Contractors. All of us serve on many charitable boards. We raise money. We're parts of the community. We live in, many of us office in that particular neighborhood, and so this is very important to us, and how this comes out is important to us. Two of our principals are actually on the Friends of Forsyth board, which is a board that is helping the city with the implementation and some fundraising associated with implementing the improvements in the master plan. And we are equally aligned with the VNA, and we'll talk about the number of meetings that we've had with them, and that being part of the community is important to us, and always has been and will continue to be. We started this process about 3 years ago. Sterling Seacrest had acquired a number of properties, and we went and talked with our neighborhoods, and we started envisioning what this could be. We hired a talented group of architects, including, at the time it was Greenline, and now it's LS3P, and as well as an out-of-town architect. And then we have local civil engineers, and we started with a design charrette and a study. And we did a walk, and we talked about what this could be, what it couldn't be, and then we literally walked around the park and looked at every building and what is great about this one, what do we not like about that one. And so this process started kind of with that visioneering process, and then through that process we have had lots and lots of iterations, bigger ones, smaller ones, multiple buildings, single buildings. And usually every time we made a change, it was related to input that we received from the community or various neighborhood meetings. In almost every instance when we've met with folks, we've actually made tweaks and changes to accommodate those particular requests. We've had we've done a lot of planning on this particular project. There's been a lot of early coordination to make sure that we check the blocks so that the math worked. One of the most significant things was the traffic study. The addition of a 450 space parking lot obviously deserved a lot of study. We collaborated in great detail with the city on that, expanding the area of influence from this particular development well beyond just the property itself. And so we looked at all kinds of traffic corridors, and what we found is that there was almost no negative impacts at all from the traffic study. We reviewed that, we've distributed it with neighbors, we've distributed it with the city. We did find out the only real problem it identified was actually some pedestrian traffic problems on Saturday mornings related to use of the particular park, and the traffic study actually implemented or makes some recommendations for us to implement should we move forward, where we can improve some safety in and around, which we certainly support. We have met with the neighborhood association 3 specific times to walk through the plans as they evolved. The first time we talked through kind of spooked everybody, honestly, because it was about the time we were talking about a big parking garage in that particular area. And we didn't have the benefits of a study, but it started to become public, and so we wanted to share with that concept with them early. Then since that time, and I know we're not here to talk about height and massing and all that other stuff, but we did spend a lot of time and effort envisioning what that would be and seeking input from folks so that other people could understand the property and what we were trying to do. But I know we're not going over that today. So we met with, in addition to meeting with the VNA, as a whole, their whole neighborhood, we met with the VNA board typically on a 2-week schedule, so I think there were probably 6 or 7 meetings we had separately with them, some online and some actually in person. We've met with Historic Savannah Foundation. They reached out to us. They wanted to learn about the project, so we absolutely met with them. They came and met in our office, and then we did a full presentation to their board and their architectural review group, and I've received some positive feedback. I know a couple of them are here. Sue and Ellie are here. They haven't shared with me their formal recommendation from the board, but so far, we've had a very inclusive process and positive feedback from them. We've talked with the Savannah Downtown Business Association. They've written us a letter of support. They see a change in the business character downtown, where we have a significant loss of over 300,000 square feet of office downtown, which changes what's going on downtown. And so this is an opportunity to kind of keep some of that office downtown. We've met with the city multiple times. We've met with stormwater to evaluate the property. The stormwater, actually, there's a stormwater challenge in that particular area, and through our engineering, we're actually able to alleviate and improve on some of the stormwater constraints we have during because of the pipe size in that particular area. We talked about the traffic study, MPC and HPC. We started going down this path with HPC and with MPC. We thought we were going to go to HPC first. We have received demo permits from them for these particular buildings when they were deemed non-contributing. But there's a phase 2 where we have to come back and talk to them about appropriateness. And so we've included them. We've met with them on at least 5 occasions, each time sharing our concepts and our thoughts, and we make changes and tweaks to our plans based upon their feedback as we move forward. We've done that also with the MPC and staff, or not the board, but the staff. We've come in, we've sat down, we've listened to them, and we're actually here today on a rezoning for TC2 because they thought this was the best, most appropriate path forward. We'd actually shifted back and forth a couple different times, one asking us to not rezone, then asking us to rezone, which we're absolutely fine with. We've made significant, one of the issues is kind of density. We have a lot of parking lots on there. The VNA, actually, we had some green space associated with the project. Almost 100% of the property right now is actually considered impervious. It's actually buildings and it's been paved over. So as part of our plan, we hope to have some more green space associated with it. And that was one of the things that we learned that HPC, MPC, and the VNA actually said, well, we don't need that. You have green space directly across the park. We'd like to see that a little bit more residential component. So what's not before you today is a portion of the property that is in direct response into what their preference was to incorporate some residential into the project as well. So I really wanted everybody to understand the process. There's not been a request of us to meet with somebody that we haven't met with. We've had probably 30 plus meetings. This is important to us. We are local folks. I hate the word developer because it sounds like you have bad intentions. But we are truly committed and believe that with good designers that are local, that have the ability to understand perspective in the neighborhood, that we have the opportunity to do great things. And we believe we're serving the city in providing and county in providing some much needed parking in and around an area where we haven't had it, and retaining some office businesses downtown. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, are there questions for the applicant or staff? No questions? Go ahead, Mr. Melder.
One question for Mr. Morrow about the overlay district that I know that we've talked about.
Yes.
You just mentioned that, maybe we would wait on a petitioner to do that overlay. Is that something that the city and MPC can begin working on without a petitioner request?
Absolutely.
Sorry. Mr. Manager, you would have to make a request to us to do the overlay. It's
Okay.
not something that we would initiate without having,
A petition?
whether it's you
request.
having a petition, but, you could call me up and say, hey, can we work together to do an overlay for this area? And then we would work on doing that overlay.
Okay.
So it doesn't have to be a petition, it's just an overlay that captures some of the things that we've been consistently talking about for the past probably year and a half.
Sure, understood. Thank you.
A little bit of clarity there. The overlay would include an area study and input from residents in and around the area, including maybe the Thomas Square neighborhood.
Absolutely. Kind of given the context and the fact that a lot of the changes that we're seeing are extending down into that area, trying to think of a good, obviously we've approved several things here off of this Bull Street corridor as well, so taking that into account would be wise.
And I good with that. The area study I know costs money, and we may not have the money for that kind of a study.
Well, as I said, if I may, Melanie Wilson, Executive Director, that is something that I would talk with Mr. Milder about as we are looking at our work programs, which I design with my staff. If this is something that the city would like to see happen, then we would talk with them about what we need, if we need additional things to make that happen.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? I have a question. Can you tell me how many commercial properties line are around Forsyth at this point in time?
Let's go back to, let's see.
I suppose commercial, office, institutional type. I know Georgia Historical is there as well. I don't want to leave them out, and I don't know whether the film building is commercial or if it's an office institutional type.
Pesky strip was in the way. There we go. All right. You know, honestly, this is our internal viewer. If you'll give me a second, believe it or not, the public one is a little less busy. I'm sorry. I know Laura's not listening though. Does not want to come up. I'll let that load. But we can kind of see that at least over here in this area, there's pretty consistent TN1, which again permits the ideas that you're going to have first floor commercial or non-residential as probably.
I know that the Forsyth has a commercial component down below the apartments.
Over on this side, also TN1, and at about mid-park, you get into the downtown residential, which is relatively low-key. It's dense, but it's largely residential. So. But I guess the interesting thing is, at least in this general area, actually in both of these districts, you could potentially see those very low-intensity non-residential uses. I'm thinking of structures that have been converted for things like wine shops. I don't know why specialty wine shop comes to mind, but just something, because we've had two of them, sorry. But you will take like a historic structure in essence and convert it to, you know, an office or a small shop or something of that nature. So it still is kind of constrained in terms of what it could become by the fact that it's in this structure that can't be demolished or modified to any major extent.
And the existing structures that are there now either have an office or a commercial use, correct?
On the subject parcels?
Yes.
That is correct. Those are offices, and there's a funeral home that is on the other side.
Or you call that a commercial structure?
So interestingly enough, for all of you who love history here, come to find out the funeral home that's here was pieced together from two historic homes that were on this parcel.
Oh, wow.
That was interesting. So apparently, thank you, Caitlin, underneath this brick veneer, you will find two existing historic structures that are not contributing. So.
All right.
Both hospitals used to be on the park too at one point, did they not?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's that big area down that's SCAD now, or was the law school at one point in time, and now it's SCAD. And this will be similar to SCAD in that we won't have property tax on it, but that's just a comment.
But the idea is form. Ultimately, we're looking for an enduring form that can live and breathe as the city grows.
All right.
So, ma'am, you mentioned property tax. So the developers are not receiving any economic benefit, through a tax abatement at all. They are using a pilot as a form to pay for the garage. So the city is being donated $10 million worth of land, and then they will get the garage paid for from the revenue system associated with that pilot and the parking. And the city, the school board, and the county will maintain their current millage rate all through that period. So they're still getting their particular millage, and the city gets the garage. So the only one that would be foregoing their millage rate would be the city, but there's a benefit for them.
Okay. All right. Other questions? I have. Go ahead. Is that Dwayne?
Yes.
good question. Thank you.
Absolutely. Just one quick second. Let's see. It's going to be, let's try roads. So if we scoot down here, park at this particular segment. It is not wanting me to, local roads, major roads. That's not helpful. Sorry, I'm normally much quicker. I can say for sure this is, I believe, a minor arterial. Well, it's calling Whitaker a major road. That is the label here, Whitaker Major Road. And then in looking at Park, also major, maybe local. I don't see on the attributes here. I'm sorry. Oh, there it is. And it didn't help. I would assume Park is regarded as local at this segment and Whitaker is regarded as major. I believe it is an arterial, a minor arterial. So even in looking at the current TN development standards, the idea behind this district is that on your corners and your thoroughfares, so corridors where you're going to come through, you're going to see use intensification, particularly I'd say because there are things that are happening downtown and there are people that are living elsewhere that's making that kind of a normal, there are things that are happening far, far away that are influencing behavior on these particular streets. It's not just what's happening locally that's influencing them. So we're seeing speeds increase, we're seeing traffic volumes increase, and Mr. Jepson kind of spoke to the idea that there are concerns for pedestrian safety. So in short, there's definitely intensification of traffic volumes in this particular area. Again, not necessarily always owing to these activities, but just because things are changing downtown and we have a jobs housing mismatch. People work down here, they live elsewhere, they come to enjoy these amenities in town. So.
Other questions? All right, I do have a number of cards here. And I think what we're going to do is give each person 2 minutes so we don't run over the applicant's time frame. We can set that up, right, Sally? Okay, good deal. Okay, we'll start off with Ellie Isaacs.
Ellie Isaacs, Director of Preservation for the Historic Savannah Foundation. The Board of Trustees and staff, this is really loud today, sorry. The Board of Trustees and staff at the Historic Savannah Foundation support the petitioner's request to rezone the 4 parcels from TN1 to TC2. As MPC staff stated, this change is consistent with the uses operating on the site since the existing buildings were constructed and is also consistent with the parcels located to the south and adjacent to Forsyth Park along Park Avenue. Per the ordinance, TC2 zoning is intended to ensure vibrancy of historic mixed-use neighborhoods with traditional development patterns characteristic of Savannah. In short, mixed zoning allows sustainable growth and the long-term preservation of communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hunsrucker?
If I may ask, is this just for item 7 or 8,
It's
or is
for
there
both
going
of
to be a
them,
later
kind of.
chance?
Pretty much for both
They're
of them.
combined?
Well,
wow.
obviously, we'll take them one at a time, but I think that they're kind of integral in their, if we don't do one, we won't do the other, so.
Okay.
If you'd like to speak for both, you're more than welcome to.
I'll fit in as much as I can in 2 minutes.
Okay.
Okay, my name is Jim Hunstrucker. I live on Forsyth Park since 1991. One thing that came out good out of the last V&A meeting was that Mr. Patterson agreed to, he offered up having just 3 stories. So also, you were just talking about Whitaker Street. He also mentioned about quieting Whitaker Street down to 1 lane. Now, as far as parking is concerned, the parking, we were told not to consider it because, well, it's not part of what's being considered, but the building needs 300 parking spaces as part of the leasing, so I consider that necessary to discuss because it's basically putting 3 Kroger parking lots underground. And of course, we know that people are lazy and they're also cheap, so they're going to use surface parking first. I think the city should consider, since we have these climate events and increased flooding, the city should consider a design where the parking garage can be used as a catch basin so that it would relieve the flooding, surface flooding in the city. And I'm also wondering if the city is bound to an agreement to support a certain amount of commercial space. And TC2 does not require every building to be 10,000 feet, so it would be nice if there was some variation in sizing. And as far as the archaeological needs, I was wondering why there's not going to be an archaeological study done on the site, because I would think that would attract people to the parking garage, that they would learn a little bit about a history of Savannah. I think there is evidence that there was a military barracks on that location. I've been trying to find supportive information on that. So I'm wondering why that's not being included as part of this event. And how much more time? 4 seconds. Maybe you'll see me some more. Thank you.
All right. Ms. Hollis?
My name is Elizabeth Hollis, and I live at 811 Whitaker Street. My husband and I raised 2 children there, and we moved there in 1980, and we love our neighborhood. But I'm telling you, this issue is hearkening me back to when these 7 ladies started the historic Savannah Foundation, because this is an issue that has become very controversial. I would like to make it clear to all of you that this letter from the Victorian Neighborhood Association saying that everything was hunky-dory with this plan was only opinions of the board of the VNA and not the membership of the VNA. It was only the board members who got to vote on it. And then it sounds like this letter, even in the news, they were saying, oh, the Victorian people are so happy with this because they wrote this letter, blah, blah, blah. But this is just not it. Even people are not happy with this idea in the Victorian district. On November the 12th, much discussion took place at the Victorian Neighborhood Association, and there were a lot of unhappy people asking questions and being frustrated with the project. It did not...
You have 30 seconds.
Well, I do not want the future land use map to change and where the codes which protect our district and quality of life. A good example of development is encouraged, like the 800 block of Whitaker Street, where a parking lot was turned into 8 very nice townhouses. But I must say this, when we have to sit here this long and wait to talk, and we've prepared something, it's not fair that we can't have more time than just 2 minutes. Thank you.
Understand. Monica Vellner? Sorry.
My name's Monica Vernon. I live across the street from Betsy at 111 West Gwinnett. I live 2 blocks from the project. I want to echo what Betsy said about the VNA letter, that the views are not represented in her letter of the neighborhood. Her letter is really false and misleading and gives the impression we support this project. We do not. We're most definitely not in support of the development the way it's currently being proposed. There are members of the board that aren't objective. We have a problem with that. I'll skip to zoning. This is a residential neighborhood. We love our neighborhood. And that's why we're very concerned about this size of a project affecting the fabric of our neighborhood. Options, perhaps the MPC. It is my feeling that the residents of the neighborhood have not been properly informed. I was impressed when the MPC tabled the hotel overlay because people weren't informed about it. It is very difficult to become a member of the VNA because in social media it says the membership, the meetings are at Forsyth, at the mansion at Forsyth. There's no transparency. It's very concerning. So one option may be to table this to at least provide information to our residents. If the zoning is allowed to be changed, could we do incremental zoning changes perhaps? This is going from like 0 to 1,000 for us. It's very concerning again. If the MPC allows this zoning change, perhaps we could allow with conditions that no more variances or special allowances would be allowed. It's just shows more, the details show more than is actually being disclosed. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Clara Gregg.
My name is Clara Gregg. I live in the Victorian neighborhood. I'm here today to voice my opinion, my opposition of the proposed zoning and flume changes. There are many residents of the Victorian district, which you've heard several already, myself included, who do not feel the VNA represents the best interests of the Victorian neighborhood, and we disagree with the proposed approval from the VNA. Furthermore, we feel the VNA has a direct conflict of interest in this zoning and flume request, as well as the larger proposed project that is looming over us, regardless of who may have abstained from the board's vote. As such, we, the concerned citizens, feel the VNA stance should hold no more importance than the individual citizens who are voicing their opposition of this request. We are looking for our appointed committees and our elected officials to uphold your civic duty and stand up for the community. Lost my place. Stand up for the community planning rather than succumbing to greed and money. The center of a residential neighborhood is no place to allow commercial zoning, nor an industrial project of the size that is proposed. To allow the excavation of an underground parking garage as well as 3 to 5 story office buildings in the heart of a neighborhood. We, the community, implore you to vote no on the proposed zoning and flume changes for the properties and maintain the Victorian neighborhood's integrity. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Leahy?
Hi, I'm Siobhan Leahy. I live at 911 Whitaker Street, right next to the proposed development. I disagree with the proposal for many reasons, but I'll come down to a few of them. In the West Victorian district, between Gwinnett and Duffy, north to south, and between Jefferson and Bull, west to east, there's only one two-story building that is a TC1, sorry. Everywhere else is a TN1. There's no TC2. I looked at all the maps yesterday. Yeah? So this contradicts the compatibility 2, which is in the proposal. TC2 is for a commercial corridor, not a commercial neighborhood. Whitaker Street on Forsyth Park is certainly not a commercial corridor. The east side of MLK is TC2. That is commercial. TC1 has got a maximum building footprint that's smaller, and I understand why they think they should go to TC2, but it is a huge leap. And although you don't want to talk about the variances, all of their proposals have gone above height, above the size, etc. And if they get permission to go TC2, they will be looking for 4 or 5 floors, not 3. Thank you.
Thank you. Ron Tuggle?
Madam Chairman, Commission members. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you.
Please
My
state
name is
your name.
Ron Tuggle. We live at 827 Whitaker, about a block over from the project. I echo the comments from the previous speakers in that the V&A letter does not represent the majority of members that I've talked to about this project. But that's an internal V&A issue, not something for the MPC. From the MPC perspective, I know you're looking at long-term planning, and it seems like as the four principals lose their office space downtown, they don't actually lose it, they're selling it because they're getting a lot of money for it. They want to retain office space. If they really did, they wouldn't have sold that. They want to be downtown, so this is just another project for a number of years until they move on and sell it for more money. Understand that. But it just seems to be changing the culture of the Victorian neighborhood. It's going to be the Victorian business district. It just seems that we're bringing the businesses from downtown that are totally saturated, turning into hotels. Now we're pushing the businesses down south to the Forsyth Park area. And it's just going to continue to change the culture, the integrity of that area. The short-term rentals have already started doing that, but it's very slow, and people are gradually getting used to it, and it will continue to change. This is a huge project. Once you approve this, there's no turning back. You can't turn that back into housing area. That's my concern. Thank you.
Thank you. Jennifer Shearer?
Hi, my name is Jennifer Shearer. I'm the owner and occupant of 909 Whitaker Street, so I'm 2 doors down. The city and the principals of this project are asking us to take a very stable neighborhood and drop a massively disruptive and high-intensity commercial project that will impact the area for both the likely 3-year construction period and continuing once the project is completed. 120,000 square foot commercial space and related parking will provide working space for possibly 1,000 workers, commuting in, leaving to find lunch, in a small neighborhood that is not equipped to handle such additional traffic and volume of people on a daily basis. I won't make a comment on the V&A stuff because we've obviously had a number of people make those comments. There are grave concerns about the lack of city management engagement so far on this, the increased parking, expectations on weekdays, as well as the increased auto usage on narrow streets such as Park, Howard, and Waldberg. Never mind Whitaker, Barnard. These streets are already difficult to maneuver vehicles through today. I mean, just drive in our neighborhood during the farmer's market. There's no telling what this impact of this project will be to the city's already problematic water and sewage systems, not to mention the numerous historic homes surrounding this area. The principals are asking the residents to just trust us, but still give inconsistent or non-answers when asked detailed questions and when concerns are raised. I understand that there is going to be a project here, but going from TN1 to TC2 is going like basically a 0 to 60 for a Tesla. I would ask this board, if you do choose to vote yes for this project, that you do not let this project grow to it by a death of 1,000 cuts. Fundamentally, what is being shown is a 5-story building system, and TC2 is 3 stories. So don't allow additional variances if you allow this to go forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Lucy Mayer?
Hello. I live about a block away from where this project is being developed, and I think that if any of you lived a block away, where buildings, even the biggest building we're talking about there is 7,000, 8,000 square feet, to 115,000 square feet, 400 and some odd spaces. Those spaces are going to be used during holidays, during weekends, during evenings, during festivals, in and out constantly. When they've shown us these studies of traffic studies, I don't think any of these traffic studies have taken this into their equation. They have just said, taken other traffic studies from other garages around Savannah and say, here you go, this is the same thing. And when I brought this up in the community meeting, the developers said to me, well, you shouldn't have moved across from Central Park. That was their response. Their insensitivity to what's going to happen to the community and to the residential people there is unacceptable. We can't allow this type of magnitude of this building to happen in this residential area. It will change everything within this area. I plead with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom Murray?
Good afternoon. I'm Tom Murray, own a property at 121 West Park. And it occurs to me from hearing some of the speakers, kind of good proxies as cities that preceded us with these types of challenges are places like Austin and Nashville, that I have been to those cities, and maybe some of you have as well. And they have gone from being these charming historic cities like Savannah is, to these monstrous cities with massive corporate headquarters, enormous office buildings right beside a historic home like we're proposing here. I do own a short-term rental. Hopefully that's not a dirty word like developer, like we heard before. But the first question I get from guests is the on-street parking. Now, I don't know what happens to the parking that now exists on the north side of West Park in front of the funeral home, which are lovely neighbors. We love those folks over there. But most often, that's where I come in when I go to park. I don't know what happens to that long-term. So clearly, every one of those cities that I just mentioned began with one project like this that seemed like, oh, it'll fit, it'll be okay. And the next thing you know, Dell Computers is in there, and Enron, and whoever else. So I'll leave that as my comment. And I have maybe two questions. One, I didn't hear how long this was going to take to propose or to build from demolition to completion. And then the reason I bring that up is, as a business owner there, if a horn goes off at night, people complain and you get bad reviews and guests, and affects your business. I can already see the reviews that, oh, it was nice, but there's a construction project across the street which will kill. I know they're short-term rentals and we're guests in the community, but I'm wondering if there's any consideration for, I don't know if it's business interruption or something where owners could say, hey, look, this was my last 3 years' business. If the business falls in half, we'd like that to be considered.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I have one online commenter, William Dallas, Mr. Dallas?
Yes, thank you very much. Madam Chairman, Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you. I rise also in opposition to this project and the change in zoning laws, much like the previous 5 or 6 people who spoke. The thing I'd like to focus on is the impact on the neighborhood. My wife and I own a house at 210 West Walnut Street, and the impact it will have on this community. Just the parking situation alone, by the plan says 460 parking spaces for the parking garage. I wouldn't expect there to be 460 cars in there every single day, but I think we have a plan on anywhere between 8% to 50%, so that's 300 or 230 to 368 vehicles that would be added into the traffic already into this community. And I think, much like others have said, this would dramatically change the character context of this community. And I very strongly feel that this is not what we should be doing. I agree with the previous speaker that said, hey, what we're doing is we're allowing businesses to move out of the downtown area, sell the property to make good money, and then come downtown, down further south, to restructure their businesses. I don't want this, and I think we should do all we can to prevent it. Thank you very much for allowing me to address it.
Thank you. All right, would the applicant like to rebut?
Yes, ma'am. Jeff Jepson again with Forsyth Commons Holdings. We are first and foremost really strong fans of good planning. We have made sure that we have local architects, local engineers involved in this particular planning. With respect to traffic, we understand that there's some concerns about it. That's why we got the study, and that's why we sat down and collaborated with the city on a really, really broad area to make sure that we understood, that particular impact. This particular property, while it is TN1, doesn't operate like a TN1 as it exists. The traffic study itself actually doesn't even contemplate that there's any existing uses or any existing traffic there. So it's even more conservative in its nature, because there's almost 25,000 square feet of office space between all the particular buildings, some which have a significant traffic impact, like the funeral home. When they actually have a funeral, the traffic counts for that particular funeral, are I guess, non-typical or atypical for the area. We've spent a lot of time, and we will continue to spend time when we get to height and massing, making sure that what we do develop above the garage is appropriate. We have been addressing scale and massings to respect the residential neighborhoods aside. On either side, we've been dropping, height and structures down. We've been changing architectural elements so that they get to be more residential in scale and feel and less commercial. Believe me, we want to be very, very respectful of this neighborhood, of which we are already a member and a part of, and of this community, and we hope to do great things, something that everybody will be proud of. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question for them.
All right, hold on. Come back for just a second. We have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
If you can address it, whether, it matters here or not, but the timeline from demolition to completion?
So demolition and construction of the car parking garage is about 9 months, and the construction for the buildings is another 12 months. So it's about 21 month duration. And I am the COO of Evans General Contractors. We build around the country, so timeline, I make my living by establishing construction timelines, so those are accurate and have been vetted and reviewed, and that's what you should expect.
Do you feel TC2 is what you need?
We do now, yes ma'am. Actually, we, in one of our last meetings with MPC, they came to us and preferred us, because they originally told us not to go ahead and rezone and just apply for certain variances. Then they basically said, this allows us a better lens to look at this through, as well as some other property, because they didn't have an overlay district. And so we basically deferred to their suggestion. They said, it doesn't strictly comply with TN1 now. TN2 allows, and we are likely to have some variance requests as we come forward. But in this particular action, there's a lot of restrictions. We're getting TC2, or we're requesting TC2, but there's a lot of restrictions on that as well. So it's not a full TC2, but it's something we can absolutely live with. And it was really the recommendation of MPC staff that asked us to do that.
Has the meetings that were held, most of these people, you've seen them before, correct?
Some of them I have seen before and talked to before, some of them I have not. I've attended personally about 5 with the board and 2 with the entire group. I did not attend the last meeting. Our architect and one of my partners
Are you a
attended that
VNA
one.
member?
I am not a VNA member. Are you a VNA member?
That's where our office is currently.
Our office is in the VNA.
Okay.
Or his office is in the VNA district right now. It's actually on the subject property.
More questions? Question for staff. Would an area study or an overlay study help to define where we want stuff like this? I mean, we did have that last one come in, and we changed zoning there, and I too treasure Forsyth Park. I mean, that's a very important thing for the city, and it is important to me that it get done right.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Give me some feedback.
So the short answer is yes, absolutely. I guess just to kind of respond to what you're saying and also attempt to kind of capture all the things that were thrown at us. Because individual property owners, whether near or far, own all of these different parcels. The requests to do things with property, they don't stop. Let me just be very blunt. It doesn't stop. When people own property, most of them acquire it for the purpose of doing something with it. So if you don't own the property, the idea that we would have the ability to control what happens in the absence of something like a plan, it just becomes that much more difficult. And every decision that you make begins to look haphazard, and you're just kind of responding to little small fires as they come. So I'd say as a property owner or a resident, a member of a community, a citizen of this country, I'll take it back to civics. You have a civic duty, you have a responsibility. We often talk about voting and things of that nature, participating in local organizations for the purpose of doing things like planning, figuring out what you want. And a plan is really just that document that kind of encapsulates the community's will. It says that this is how we see our community going. These are the things that we need. These are the things that we don't want. And so setting up places so that you can have jobs, and setting up places for people to live, setting up places for entertainment. It's just a basic and foundational activity of any neighborhood. So we absolutely need them, not just here, but everywhere.
Okay. Do we need it before we approve the zoning of this property?
I will say I regard myself as a solver of people's problems. And so I think this can move forward, reasonably speaking. But again, my appeal to especially our repeat customers, the Ellens and McCorkles of the world, when you come forward, please, bring your client and the associated neighborhood forward so that we can sort of start to coordinate these things and not have haphazard decisions, because, we're going to find ourselves having this type of conversation every time.
Can you tell me what the zoning is on the existing lawyer's building? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I just was going to have, and while you were talking, to talk about the TC2 and why that was suggested. And part of it was to help with eliminating a little bit of a few of the variances because there were so many. But there are other reasons behind that as well. And you should be pithy, but answer.
No,
the
absolutely.
response.
So there was not a great fit with any of our current options. And so TC2, again, being a traditional district, all the TC districts are nested. They build and they sort of fit into one another. And so again, this isn't really about a change in character. It's got a bigger footprint, but again, there are already buildings that are significantly larger that we want to see go away today. So it's not like we weren't doing this. This is literally just to kind of fit it within the context of what the city has already been doing and create sort of an orderly flow. Actually, I'll borrow Mr. Jepson's words. It's a lens through which to view what's happening here. It speaks to an intensity of traditional oriented commercial activity that could also, truthfully, people are looking at this as though this is just the site plan. It's not that. It's a rezoning, and that's why staff can comfortably support this to say these things are happening. These changes are occurring on the ground right now. This could end up being a single-family home. I'm not trying to be facetious, but all of these things are permitted, the full scale. And so don't yet commit yourself to that site plan. It's a simple rezoning request, and it should be reviewed from the perspective of appropriateness, generally speaking.
And the study could take upwards of 2 years, is my understanding.
2 years?
To get an overlay district approved, to do a study and get one approved is not a short. Somebody actually said 5 years.
It is not a short-term plan, but I would not say it's a 2-year.
No, I think that, excuse me if I may, two things. One, because I do want to get a little bit more detail with regard to what we suggested. We suggested that they had a choice to either come back and ask for the TC2 to at least help with some of the variances, and there could be some general discussion, as well as some other issues that they were having with regards to trying to site the property with the zoning that they had. The other one, which was really our preference, was that they create a planned development, which would have allowed them to kind of create a hybrid zoning district that had some of the things that they needed so that there wouldn't be a need to ask for variances. That was our number one preference. So I just want to be very clear. Our initial preference was the PD. The second part of that was to do the TC2. As far as an overlay, or basically a mini study is what I would call it. That basically, it just depends on, how fast and how much time basically you want to spend on it. And when I say that, we draw there would have to be boundaries drawn to look at how far you go out. It might not go out as far as some people need it to go to. The study could even go into 2 phases in order to address like maybe a 5-block radius and then an 8-block radius, depending on how large of an area that you want to cover. Of course, the shorter radius is going to yield a faster result. But it is something that should involve the neighborhoods that are impacted by this, and these are the current neighborhoods, but also the public, because at the end of the day, because Forsyth Park is Forsyth Park, it's the number one place that people, when they come to Savannah, the first thing they want to do is come to Forsyth Park and look at the fountain. So it does impact multiple people throughout the community. So, it's something that if it's done right, you're probably not looking at 5, probably about 6 months with, having, robust conversations with the neighborhoods and working with the existing plans, because there are existing plans for that area. It would be looking at all of those and trying to make sure that you got something that is not going to be contrary to what's in place. I'm talking about the neighborhood plans. So that would probably be the fastest that I would even think about moving forward. But it would probably take you 6 months to a year at the longest.
All right. What is the zoning in the lawyer's building? The existing?
That's a great question. It is TC2, if I'm not mistaken. TC2. Oh.
Yep.
It is right here. It is in the TN1. I'm sorry, it's across the street. That is TC2.
So it's TN1?
It is TN1.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I'd like to ask a question of our ED. What have we done in the past in situations similar to this? Have we done studies in the past? Yeah, I'm a stickler for predictability and procedure. I like to see things done uniformly to where we aren't doing one item with one community and then changing with another. And I think that's what I'm hearing from my fellow commissioner. The question is, are we being consistent? So what have we done in the past when we've been faced with a situation similar to this?
I would say that this is a little bit unique in that you've got the underground parking. If the city were not part of this, for example, we still would have suggested that there be a little bit more time to do some additional research. When we get these requests, we get a very limited amount of time to look at the surrounding area. This was a very complicated request. You've got an underground parking garage that was, I can't recall whether it was initially part of the initial discussion, but I do know that it got added in. And you've got, a building that, in essence, kept getting bigger and bigger. Mr. Jepson's right. We basically have been working with them for probably a year and a half. And when we initially started talking about this, I said there needs to be some type of mini plan, but there really wasn't the pulse to do it. And to be candid, it's not technically on them to do that. That is something that the city could do, but they didn't really have a pulse to do it either. It was one of those things where I think that the initial thought was that this would come in, there would be the request, and we would be able to get it done sooner. I think, they've been gracious enough, to be honest with you, to go and try to get something that had a better design. So they're right. A lot of this time was that they had an initial project that wasn't necessarily the greatest design. And my feedback to them was, if you're going to do something that is going to have the presence that this is going to have, you really do need to make sure you've got somebody that is going to do something that's architecturally significant. The other challenge that they had was, and the reason that this took so long, is that they also had 2 buildings that have to be demolished. And there was a lot of question about, were they contributing buildings or were they not contributing buildings? And that took several months to go through the process because it went to the Historic Preservation Commission, and then it went to City Council. So this hasn't been just a process that was all MPC Planning Commission only. This has been a process that has involved multiple boards and commissions and recommendations that were needed. But in order to be candid, in order to truly address some of the concerns that the neighborhood has, and they've been kind of concerns that I've had with regards to having some type of transition area, not only there, but to the other properties that will probably come in, you do need to have, most of the time, you would consistently say, we need to do a study. And that study would be something that, takes some time to do.
So until 45 days ago, or 40 days ago, the advice was to not rezone and to just go TN1, develop your property, request some variances. 40 days ago, there was a decision made that the lens to look at this through that was more appropriate, and they said, hey, would you guys go and rezone? So we said, okay. So we're here before you based upon a recommendation of MPC and the city to go ahead and rezone. And there's been, I know this is the first you guys are hearing a lot of it, but there's been lots and lots of study and analysis and coordination and meetings and thought into this. And we've been saying yes to this and yes to that and yes, we can do this and yes to that. And so, however, we do have some practical things that we need to deal with in terms of businesses operating and moving into locations and renting and transient spaces and all those things. And so we think that they were right in their final recommendation. It took some groupthink to get us there. And we also think that TC2 probably makes sense for a lot of the properties as you move down there. If you look at that Bowen building, that one did not rezone, but it would, based on the footprint alone, it was only allowed to have a 2,500 square foot footprint. So it already had to have variance. We could do the same thing and not do that, but we're just trying to be good partners because they asked us to do it this way. So I'd ask that you not penalize us and require a further area study that is not necessarily overly specific to our site. Because all we can do is coordinate and collaborate on our site. That's what we can control. And then include areas that they've asked us to study up to date, and which we have done up to date. We just want to avoid now all of a sudden somebody else saying, and oh, by the way, even though all of these professional planners have collaborated and steered us towards a direction, and now all of a sudden have to cast the net even wider. There's no doubt that there's a greater discussion to be had about how that moves forward, but we're pretty confident that we have the right design, the right zoning, and the right advice from the planning professionals here in the room.
And if I may, I just really want to be very, very clear, because I said it before and I just want to reiterate it. When we met again, we gave them two choices. We said, do the plan development using TC2 standards, or you could just get it rezoned to TC2. They both would have required a rezoning. The reason that the PD was the number one recommendation was because it would have allowed them to do more siting, so you would have been able to have a better understanding about what they want to put on the site and how it would look like, and they would still be able to take the stuff they needed out of the TC2 and even some of the variances that they're going to have a request for, and have it all put into this planned development mini district. That's not what happened. They chose the TC2, and there's nothing wrong with that. The TC2, and I just want to make the community understand, the development criteria for the TC2, the heights are still the same, just so you know. Yes, if you look at the heights, we can pull it up. We've got the side-by-side. The thing that's the biggest difference for that is that it allows for, technically, for the size of our site, it would allow for almost 100% impervious coverage. But if you look at what the requirements are, do you see one is 2,500 square feet or for impervious, the other is 10,000 square feet, and then the height is 40 feet for one, I'm sorry, and 45 feet for the other. So there's a 5-foot difference, but it's not like it's a 100-foot difference, is my point to you. It's still 40 feet, 45 feet, more impervious coverage. And the 45 feet basically, it allows them to play a little bit with the design. And I just, for full transparency, when talking with them, I suggested that as they're looking at a design, getting a good design, which is important because it's Forsyth Park. I recognize the importance of that park. It is the city's moneymaker. It's the community's moneymaker. And it's the community of Savannah's park. It really is. So there really needed to be good design. So talking with them, I suggested and strongly encouraged that they spend some time getting a good architect. And for that, we would support having even more height, but not the whole building be that tall. But some height that would give them the opportunity to have some texture and movement, so you're not looking at this big block on the park. That's what my recommendation was, so I just want to be very clear with you all.
But we're not doing a general development plan right now.
But we're not doing that general plan, but the plan development zoning that we talked with them about would have allowed us to have more of that discussion. The TC2, and if you see what our recommendation is, the TC2 allows them to have, again, an additional 5 feet, technically with the zoning that they could do by right, and it allows them to do 100%, almost 100%, or let's just say 100% impervious coverage. That's still less variance. It is a big building, but now you understand why I said I would be willing to go above that for some of the areas that could handle it, because you don't want to look at a building that's a big block. You want to have something that has, well, I'm just saying that.
We're getting way
No, but
beyond
without having to do that, we're getting into a little bit more detail, but I'm just telling you, that's how we recommended it, and it would have given you some movement, that's all.
We're gonna go ahead and actually, we have discussed the future land use map amendment. I am going to give an opportunity to those people who spoke already to speak on the zoning. Now, I'll give you 2 minutes, and if you feel like you've said what you needed to say, we heard what you said, please don't stand up and speak. If you feel like you have something more to say, Mr. Hunsrucker, you can stand up and speak. But wait a minute, we're going to start off with Ms. Isaacs. Okay.
We had 2 questions from the...
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Irvin.
Thank you. It's my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, I didn't pull it up on my phone yet, but TC2 does ensure the historic nature of the neighborhood.
Does it sure?
When I say ensure, it makes sure that we are not going bonkers with this idea, and it keeps it within that character of the neighborhood that we're talking about, that we're concerned about, and that it doesn't allow this overbroad, overreaching type of structure to be built anyway. Is that correct?
I'm personally more comfortable with the TC2 because I know exactly what they can do, and with the plan development, it's kind of...
And that's why I asked the question, because that was my understanding without pulling the code up to look.
Okay.
Okay.
Other questions?
Can I ask a question too?
Sure.
This would still require historic preservation review.
And MPC review.
And MPC review for anything that would come, right? So it's still protected under all the historic overlays.
Absolutely.
And the design standards would have to be approved there for whatever comes.
Even if it's a single-family home.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Mr. Hunsrucker?
Hello, my name is...
Briefly, please.
I'm sorry?
Briefly, please.
I'm trying.
Okay. Name?
My name is Jim Hunsrucker. My experience has been with TC2, the corner of Gwinnett and East Broad. Now, if you're willing to stick to what the word of the ordinance says, 3 stories up to 45 feet, that means please do not allow another variance for height, because that's going to end up being a 55. They want a 72-foot tall building. So I'm not sure exactly what you're saying here as far as TC2 should be the rule, but there's always these variances that come along. So, and I think they get heard by you
You'll be here when the general development plan comes through, I'm sure.
I'll try my best.
I know you will.
And my other concern is this won't always be office space, or it might not always be office space. So the city might have another, like a hotel. I think the space is open plan, so it can be adjusted to different sizes and whatnot. So my concern is another hotel on Forsyth Park is going to be a concern of the neighborhood. And also TC2 allows a maximum setback of 5 feet. So opening up and causing some undulation in the building and something that is not, like you say, a solid block of a building. So that is a concern to make it more rhythmic, open spaces. A solid 8,000 square foot building is not as appealing as multiple buildings. I'm still concerned about the archaeological study. Anyway, y'all have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Vernon, would you like to come back? Okay. Ms. Grigg?
Clara
2
Gregg.
minutes.
I just wanted to hit on a few points that I caught during the presentation. Yes, cities do evolve over time. However, the integrity of the neighborhood really does need to be taken into consideration when these requests are being made. And Mr. Morrow made an offhanded comment while he was speaking that people work downtown and live elsewhere. Well, you've just heard from quite a few community members who do live directly in this neighborhood and will be significantly impacted by this zoning and land use map change. And to conclude, I just wanted to say, continuing to allow these parcels in residential neighborhoods to be rezoned to commercial will chip away at the integrity of our neighborhoods and our communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hollis?
I had one more thing. I'm sorry. We keep talking about Park and Whitaker, but you're not taking into consideration the back end of this project. So we've got Howard Street, we've got Barnard Street, we've got more involved than what's being discussed here, and we've got more impacted neighborhood residents that are going to be impacted by this, not just the Whitaker corridor.
Understood.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hollis, would you like to?
Yes. My concern is mostly about this zoning issue, because if one project is granted permission to change from a TN1 to a C blah, blah, blah,
TC2.
whatever the worst is, one end is here and it sounds like the developers want to jump from 0.1 to 0.100 as far as what they're allowed to do. I'm afraid that this is setting a precedence of other things to happen, more bigger buildings in the Victorian district to try to chip away from the actual neighborhood feel that we have now. And we've worked hard to make this a community. When I moved here in 1980, we had people who were friends of ours who would never come to visit because they were scared to death to come to our neighborhood, because Forsyth Park at that time was a war zone at night. Prostitutes, liquor, heaven only knows what. However, it's a lovely neighborhood now, and we want to keep the neighborhood feel. So please keep this in mind when you consider it. I just don't see why it has to make this big jump from one zoning to the complete other end of whatever, build whatever you want kind of thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Leahy, would you like to add? Ms. Leahy?
Oh, sorry.
State your name, please.
Oh, sorry, Siobhan Leahy. TC2 is a commercial corridor, not a commercial lot. And I think it's got to be planned that if that area is going to be a commercial corridor, that should be planned in advance. And since what they're going to ask for are loads of variances on top of TC2, I don't see the point in changing it at all. They might as well change it, leave it as TM1, and then ask for the variances on top of that.
Thank you. Ms. Scherer?
No, thank you.
All right. Ms. Mayer?
I'm fine.
Mr. Tuggle?
No, thank you.
Mr. Murray?
Yeah, just a quick question. If somebody could maybe describe what those 21 months of construction and excavation looks like for that area? I mean, is it a war zone? Are the streets closed? What does it look like for those 21? It's a pretty long time.
We'll see if we can answer that when the developer comes back up. Thank you. Mr. Murray? Mr. Dallas was online. Mr. Dallas, are you still online? Would you like to share again?
I do not see his hand raised, so I
Okay.
don't think so.
Mr. Galloway?
Oh, I see the hand raised now.
All right, go ahead, Mr. Dallas.
Okay, thank you. Put me on mute. William Dallas, thank you again for the opportunity to speak. I only became aware of this project this past summer and planned to come to the October meeting to voice my concern over this project, so I apologize if I'm kind of late to the party. But I do think that this project would dramatically change the characterization of this neighborhood. And I understand this is a business and it may be good for the city, but this is, from all the people you've heard, this is our neighborhood and this is our home. So I do not know what community input has been received, but I think that needs to be taken very seriously in these decisions that are rendered. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Galloway?
Hello.
State your name for the record, please.
Yeah, I'm Peter Galloway. I tried to speak earlier. So I think what everybody's trying to say is, so if they're TN1 now, they can still be commercial use. So I don't think anybody has a problem with having office spaces. I think that's great. But I think it's trying to think of the development for the future, like everybody's saying. Like, yeah, there's coffee shops on Park. There's a law firm. It's 3 stories. Yes, it's maybe bigger than the square footage allows for TN1. I get that. They probably got a variance approved. I think it's just, I think precedence is huge. You know, this is such an important lot. And that's why everybody's talking about it. And we're all neighbors. So it is super residential. I live on 114 West Bolton Street. We've got 2 little kids. We're right, Howard Street's our lane. So we're a block from the development. And even on like a busy Saturday, there's cars trying to park and it's busy. So you add in this huge development, the huge garage. Again, the traffic study, we can argue about that forever, but I do think it's gonna make a huge impact. And I think it's just, you know, you're probably gonna say yes, but at the end of the day, like, I do think precedence is huge and this is such an important lot, and I think it just, you really need to be careful with what you decide. So I think it's just, it's a really important decision. I'm sure that doesn't, you know, I'm sure you agree, but I don't know, with TC2, yes, they can get more stuff done, but all the site plans that I've seen, it's 75 to 85 feet tall, which is over 1.5 times the max height. So I think everybody's in agreement. Yeah, if you go to TC2, don't let them have variances. And I guess that's a whole nother debate for another meeting, but just my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, would the applicant like to come back up?
I'll be very brief, ma'am. What I hear is that everybody has a lot of respect for this parcel, and it deserves a lot of respect and a lot of thought. But that's why you hire great designers and creative designers that have experience in thinking through how to solve things. Not everything old is good. Sometimes stuff that is old is just a good example of what can be remade or recreated in the future. And if we engage respectfully with the community and all of these organizations and get their input, which has been our effort, then we know that we can do that. I know there were some folks that were still concerned that we were looking at one larger building. That's not the case now. We've listened, we've heard, our latest iteration of this actually has 3 buildings on the property and not 1, so that we do have more pedestrian connectivity, so that things read level, and we still have hundreds of design decisions to make as we move forward. But we absolutely have the right design professionals to guide us through that, and we commit that we're going to continue to do this and work this until we get it right. Thank you.
And you will be back when you have a general development plan, so these people can take a good, close look at it and give you their comments at that point in time.
We will meet with them long before. We will meet with them first, as well as HSF, as well as the Downtown Business Association, and HPC and MPC. We will probably have 15 to 20 meetings before we're back here in front of you.
That sounds great. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any questions?
Just have a comment.
I'm sorry? Comment? Go ahead.
Lorraine Bowles, I just wanted to comment that I certainly appreciate, and I think all of us appreciate, neighbors coming out to voice their opinions, and the petitioner and all the rigorous discussion that has taken place with the MPC, with the city, with the neighbors, with associations, with individuals. It's probably the most rigorous that I have seen, starting 3 years ago and then a year and a half working with MPC in the city to get things done. And I, with respect to the overlay district, or the overlay, we can think of many places that need overlays, right? In addition, this is a very important one because it's Forsyth Park, but we did discuss whether it's something that we could do in tandem. Because we want to honor the fact that there has been a lot of rigorous discussion already. And that's it.
Thank you.
So thank you, everybody.
Other comments, questions?
Motion?
I have a comment. I appreciate how much Forsyth Park means to everybody. I live in the Thomas Square neighborhood, and I live a couple of blocks away from the 5-story building that's presently under construction, and I was not enthusiastic about that when that came about. I'm still not terribly enthusiastic about it, but it has made me much more guarded since I was on the commission at that point in time, but I have a more authoritative position now, so I'm going to do my best to make sure that whatever comes before me, if it were something in my neighborhood, that I could live with it. So I appreciate you coming out and talking to us. And I think we need to have a motion on the flume first.
Bowles, motion to approve staff recommendation.
Irvin, second.
All right. I have a motion and a second. Ms. Bowles?
Yes.
Mr. Irvin?
Yes.
Mr. Kegler?
Yes.
Mr. Melder?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Wiley.
Mr. Wywoody?
Yes.
I'm so sorry. I too say yes. All right. Flume map amendment has been approved. Now a motion for the zoning.
Irvin moved to approve zoning.
Bowles,
With the-
second.
With the condition that was stated by staff that uses be TN1 uses.
Sorry, go back.
It's right there, permissible uses.
I remove my motion. Let me take a peek.
Just approve staff.
Commercial. Yes, I approve staff recommendation. I wanted to read it again. Urban approved staff recommendation
Just wanted
as
to make
presented.
sure.
Yes, I wanted to read it. You said that, you threw me off.
Sorry.
Bowles, second.
All right. Ms. Bowles?
Yes. Yes.
Mr. Irvin?
Yes.
Mr. Kegler?
Yes.
Mr. Melder?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Wywoody?
Yes.
I too say yes. All right, thanks. Thank you, guys. Still goes before city council. All right, I think we're done, aren't we? No presentations, no staff reviews, no other business, no executive session. I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
I just want to take a moment to introduce the new staff.
All in favor? I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. We do have a new staff member.
Yes.
And I said something. Please.
She's working with Edward's team, so Sadie, come up. She is a fairly new graduate, I guess, of University of Michigan. Hello.
Hello. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yay. Any questions for her? Grill her right off the bat? All right, a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. Cool.